Κυρίες και κύριοι, φίλες και φίλοι, καλησπέρα σας. Απόψε θα είμαστε ΤΕΤ-Α-ΤΕΤ με ένα Κύπριο, με ένα συμπατριώτη μας που κατάφερε να φύγει από τα σύνορα της Κύπρου και να πετύχει διεθνώς. Είναι ο νούμερο 1 Κύπριος συγγραφέας όλων των εποχών, με εκατομμύρια πωλήσεις σε όλο τον κόσμο. Είναι ο Alex Michaelides. Άλεξ, καλώς ήρθες.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ, Τάσο.
Πολλοί κόσμος μου έλεγε ότι περίμενε να σε δει στην εκπομπή, γιατί έχουν διαβάσει τα βιβλία σου, την Σιωπηλή, ασθενή, τις Κόρες. Τώρα βρισκόμαστε, να πω και στον κόσμο, με αφορμή το καινούριο σου βιβλίο, το Μένος, στα αγγλικά The Fury, το οποίο το έχω ξεκινήσει και έχω να σου πω, είναι συναρπαστικό. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ που είσαι μαζί μας. Ξέρω ότι είσαι ντροπαλός, δεν σου αρέσουν πολύ οι συνεντεύξεις και ξέρω ότι πολλοί κόσμος θέλει να μάθει για σένα πράγματα. Πώς ένα παιδί από την Κύπρο κατάφερε αυτή τη στιγμή να είναι νούμερο 1 διεθνώς. Να πω ότι η Σιωπηλή, ασθενής ήταν νούμερο 1 στη λίστα με τα best sellers το New York Times. Έχει πουλήσει πάνω από 7,5 εκατομμύρια αντίτυπα διεθνώς. Θα γίνει ταινία σύντομα. Οι Κόρες επίσης μεγάλη επιτυχία και ήταν στα best seller το New York Times και Sunday Times. Τώρα έχουμε το Μένος, όπου είδα ότι έκανες μεγάλη περιοδεία στην Αμερική. Συνεντεύξεις στον Τζον Στεφανόπουλος, στο Good Morning America. Ο Jimmy Fallon προτείνει το βιβλίο σου. Τα έχω πει όλα εγώ, πες κάτι εσύ. Λοιπόν, ακούω, πώς θες να ξεκινήσουμε? Να το πάρουμε από την αρχή? Θα μιλάμε ελληνικά ή αγγλικά?
Well, you have to forgive me. That's what's so nice. First of all, I'd like to say how nice it is to be here, sitting talking to you. I think of you as a friend, so it makes it very special for me, this interview. And please forgive me for speaking English. I just express myself better in English.
Είναι η πρώτη σου συνέντευξη στην κυπριακή τηλεόραση?
Ναι.
Νομίζω,
ναι.
Ναι. Ωραία. Να πούμε ότι ο Άλεξ μιλά ελληνικά, αλλά εκφράζεται καλύτερα στα αγγλικά. Γεννήθηκε στην Κύπρο, στη Λευκοσία, σωστά. Η μητέρα σου είναι Αγγλίδα και ο πατέρας σου Κύπριος.
Ναι.
Και μεγάλωσες κανονικά στη Λευκοσία. Με διακοπές πήγαινες Αγγλία. Πώς ήταν η παιδική ηλικία σου?
I was just talking about it with a friend today, actually. Yes, we used to spend the summers in England. And so it was very magical for me to go to Hamleys and Madame Tussauds and see the sights every summer, and it was very special,
Usually they spend the summer in Cyprus.
Yes.
Εσύ πήγαινες στην Αγγλία.
Yes, to escape the heat, of course.
Ναι. Πού μεγάλωσες στη Λευκοσία?
Στρόβολο.
Στρόβολο. Είσαι Λευκοσιάτης, λοιπόν. Βέρος, μεγαλώνεις στην Κύπρο, δίγλωσσος. Φαντάζομαι από μικρός και αγγλικά και ελληνικά λόγω της μαμάς σου.
Yeah. It was a little difficult in my house because my mother's Greek was never great, and so we tended to speak English at home, which is why, because my mother is also like a very literate person, and our house is full of books, and I feel very much that she made me into a writer. She gave me all of the books that inspired me to write, and they were all English books, and so culturally, I think I'm very drawn to Greece and Cyprus, but in terms of literature and stuff, I think my mother's influence was more. So that's probably why I write in English. Yeah.
Όλα αυτά που είπα για σένα τώρα στην αρχή, πώς τα ακούς όταν τα λέει κάποιος άλλος? Δηλαδή, αυτές οι πωλήσεις σε εκατομμύρια αντίτυπα, νούμερο 1 από New York Times κτλ. Συνεντεύξεις σε μεγάλα show της Αμερικής. Όλη αυτή η επιτυχία που βιώνεις, που ζεις τα τελευταία χρόνια, την περίμενες ή και εσύ έχεις, ας πούμε, εκπλαγεί?
No, is the short answer. No, I didn't expect any of it, It was like an overnight success that took 25 years to arrive. When The Silent Patient was bought by my American publishers, I think they began to have a sense that it was going to be successful, but nobody told me. I think probably wisely. And so when I got the call that it got to #1, I wasn't even aware that it would be on the New York Times bestseller list, so it came as a huge shock. Yeah.
Και γράφεις στα αγγλικά, σωστά?
That's right, yes.
Και θέλω να μου πεις, όταν πήρες το πρώτο αντίτυπο του βιβλίου σου στα ελληνικά, πώς ένιωθες όταν το μεταφράσανε στα ελληνικά? Η Σιωπηλή, ασθενής, φαντάζομαι, ήταν αυτή.
Yeah, it was. It was very exciting to see, yeah. I looked at it. I didn't read it all because I don't, it's nothing to do with the translation, but once I finish a book, I've read it so many times, and I'm worried that I'm going to find things that I want to change. And so I'd like to keep my distance from it slightly, but it's wonderful. And it's nice, the Greek translation, because it's the only one that I can actually read, whereas the other languages, unfortunately, I don't speak,
Πριν λίγους μήνες, το Δεκέμβριο, είχε τιμηθεί στην Κύπρο με το βραβείο Man of the Year. Και είδα από τις αντιδράσεις του κόσμου και τις επόμενες ημέρες ότι ο κόσμος νιώθει περήφανος για σένα. Οι Κύπροι γενικότερα, κόσμος που σε ξέρει, που σε διαβάζει κτλ. Γιατί, όπως είπα και στην αρχή, δεν υπάρχουν Κύπροι συγγραφείς που κάνουν καριέρα σε όλο τον κόσμο. Εσύ το εισπράττεις αυτό, νιώθεις αυτή την περηφάνεια του κόσμου?
It felt very nice. Yeah, it did. It felt lovely. It's hard for me to answer these questions, Tassos, because I don't, it still doesn't quite feel real. So my first book, when it became a bestseller in America, I was living in London, and I didn't really have a sense of how, you say millions of people, and I don't know what that looks like. And so it's hard for me even to imagine. So when I did an event like Man of the Year with you in Cyprus, it felt very special because suddenly I meet people, and when you meet people who say to you, oh, I loved your book, it moved me, it kept me company, things like that I find very moving. Yeah.
Ωραία. Πώς ξεκινάς να γράφεις ένα βιβλίο? Είναι κάτι που το έχουν απορία πολλοί. Έχεις την υπόθεση στο μυαλό σου ήδη και κάθεσαι κάτω για να την γράψεις? Ξέρεις από την αρχή ποιος είναι ο δολοφόνος, ξέρεις το τέλος, ή γράφοντας αποφασίζεις πώς θα συνεχιστεί το βιβλίο?
That's a great question. Okay, so my first two books, I planned them both very carefully for like a year and a half, where I knew what happened in every single chapter all the way through, because I was, I think, inexperienced and I was afraid, and so I wanted to keep control. And then with my third book, Domenos, I thought I would try something different, and I thought I would try and tell a story without planning it. And so I began writing it by knowing the location, which is a Greek island, and knowing the characters, but not knowing who the murderer was and not knowing who the victim was, and just tell myself a story and see if I could be entertained and surprised by it. And it was a very exciting experience, yeah.
Ένιωσα ότι το καινούριο σου βιβλίο, το Μένος, είναι πιο γρήγορο, δηλαδή πιο γρήγορα μπαίνει στην πλοκή. Έτσι ήταν? Όντως είναι πιο fast forward?
Yes, it was deliberate, because a friend of mine, Uma Thurman, who I'm sure we'll talk about, who I wrote the book for, she once said to me years ago, Alex, you have a first act problem, which means I take too long to get going with the story, and I'm trying to improve that. So with Domenos, I was trying to get to the story faster and keep it moving. Yes, so I'm glad you said that. Thank you.
Ναι, το κατάλαβα σε σχέση με τα άλλα σου δύο βιβλία, τα οποία στην αρχή, ξέρεις, πρέπει να εξηγήσεις και το σκηνικό, αλλά και τους χαρακτήρες. Εδώ ήταν πιο κινηματογραφικό.
Well, also it depends on the kind of book it is. So the first two books are detective stories, and it's it's special kind of structure. And this time I wanted to write more of a thriller, more of a character study, and so there was less to explain, and I just kind of got on with the story right from the start. Yeah.
Χρειάζεσαι ειδικές συνθήκες για να γράψεις ένα βιβλίο? Δηλαδή, θέλεις να είσαι κάπου με ησυχία, στο σπίτι σου, να πας κάπου διακοπές, κάπου απομονωμένα για να γράψεις, ή μπορείς να γράψεις και σε ένα πάρκο ή σε μια καφετέρια?
No, I've tried. If I try writing in a cafe, I tend to get enraged with other people's conversations. No, I need complete peace and quiet. So I wrote the first book that I wrote entirely in Cyprus was Domenos, and that was a really wonderful experience because I was completely by myself in my flat with lots of light, lots of sunshine. And I just tend to lock myself away when I write a book. And so I did the first draft in about 3 months in Nicosia. And I just wrote every day, and I didn't see many people. And I become a bit of a hermit when I write. So it worked really well for me.
Πόσο καιρό παίρνει?
I say the first draft is about 3 months. But then, like Billy Wilder, my favorite writer-director, said writing is rewriting. So I think of it like getting a slab of clay or an oil painting, then you add layers and details. And so I rewrite a lot all the time, many drafts, again and again.
Άρα, τα έχουμε και τα 3 βιβλία του Άλεξ εδώ. Όπως είπα, όλα παγκόσμια best seller. Το Μένος γράφτηκε στην Κύπρο. Οι Κόρες?
London. During COVID, locked in my flat. It was miserable.
Και η Σιωπηλή ασθενής.
That was, well, that, you know, because that book is special because I was working not very successfully as a screenwriter, traveling the world and, you know, filming. That's why I met Uma. I was filming in New York and Los Angeles. And I didn't expect, I wrote it as a hobby. So I was traveling, it took me 5 years, excuse me, and I was traveling with like a stack of pages that I would take everywhere I went with me while I was working on other projects. And at the weekends and when I had time, I would work on the silent patient. So it was kind of written all over the world, really.
Είπες ότι δούλευες ως σεναριογράφος για αρκετά χρόνια. Το θυμάμαι και το ξέρω γιατί έχουμε την κοινή μας φίλη, την Εύη την Αντωνιάδη, που μου έλεγε τα νέα σου. Είπες ότι δούλευες ανεπιτυχώς, χωρίς επιτυχία ως σεναριογράφος. Πώς γίνεται ένας από τους πιο επιτυχημένους συγγραφείς στον κόσμο αυτή τη στιγμή να λέει ότι δούλευε ανεπιτυχώς ως σεναριογράφος? Υπάρχουν διαφορές μεταξύ σεναριογράφου και συγγραφέα? Ο σεναριογράφος εξαρτάται και από άλλα πράγματα, και από το σκηνοθέτη και από τους ηθοποιούς κτλ. Ενώ εδώ είσαι μόνο εσύ, μόνο το ταλέντο σου.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just a better novelist. I honestly, it's difficult. You know, I'm being slightly flippant when I say that I was an unsuccessful screenwriter, because sometimes when I say that, people get annoyed with me, because I did have 3 films made that I wrote, but they weren't successful. And the turning point for me was when I was at a party in Los Angeles, and I met somebody who'd actually seen one of the films that I had written. And he said, forgive me for saying this, but having seen that film, I didn't expect you to be so interesting. And it was like a knife in my heart. And I realized then that there was a kind of disconnect between what was inside me and what I was able to get across in screenplays. And that was when I decided, okay, I have to write a book. And the moment I started to write in Theo's voice for The Silent Patient, something unlocked in me, and I thought, oh, I can do this. This is so much easier. This is more suited to me. So that's part of the answer. The other answer is you're quite correct. The problem with screenwriting is there's so many people involved, and a screenwriter is the least important person. The only important person on a film set is the director. And so if you're not the director, you might as well not be there. You know, and a screenplay is just a blueprint for the film. The film is the product, not the screenplay. And I guess I just wanted to have my own thing, you know, which novels works really well for.
Τώρα, αυτά τα 3 βιβλία θα γίνουν ταινίες ή σειρές. Το Σιωπηλή ασθενής ήδη...
Hopefully it'll get made this year. Yeah.
Ναι. Yeah. Και οι Κόρες θα γίνει σειρά.
Yes, so, yeah.
Όταν θα γίνονται τα σενάρια για την ταινία ή για τη σειρά, θα είσαι εσύ εμπλεκόμενος σε αυτό? Θα γράψεις τα σενάρια ή θα τα γράψουν άλλοι βάσει των βιβλίων σου?
No, I'm not involved in the first 2.
No.
I was asked to write The Silent Patient, and I felt that it was better for me to write books. I enjoy writing books more, and quite frankly, it was clear to me that I was better at writing books. But with the Maidens, with the Fury, it's different.
Δεν είναι περίεργο που θα γράφουν άλλοι σεναριογράφοι σενάριο βασισμένο στο βιβλίο σου?
I think as long as there's true to the spirit of the book, I think it's fine. And I think you have to allow that, you know, once you put it out to the world and you give it to somebody, then it becomes their creative piece, and then they can retell it in a different way. And I think you have to, if I were to try and control everything that everybody did, I think I'd go crazy, you know.
Ποιος βλέπει πρώτα το βιβλίο σου πριν το στείλει στον εκδότη? Υπάρχουν, ας πούμε, φίλοι, συγκεκριμένοι άνθρωποι που θα διαβάσουν το νέο σου βιβλίο πριν προχωρήσεις?
No. It takes me so long before I can, you know, look at it and not feel ashamed, I suppose. I'm very self-critical. And so it takes, you know, a long time. And once it's ready, I send it to my agent, Sam, and then my editor, Ryan, in New York, and Joel, now my new editor in London. And it was the 3 of us, me, Joel, and Ryan, who they can give criticism, because I think if you have to give criticism to an early stages creative product, you have to be kind, and you know how to give criticism in the best helpful way. And they're both such brilliant people, and Sam too. So I feel safe giving it to them, and they get very constructive feedback, you know.
Άρα δεν το στέλνεις σε κάποιο φίλο ή φίλη για να σου πει την άποψη του, το feedback του πριν.
No.
Το στείλεις.
You know, it's funny you say that. That's because one of the things I've really learned is when I was young and I would write scripts, I would do one draft and I think it was perfect and I would send it out to everyone I knew and I'd send it out to agents and producers and everyone hated it every time because it wasn't ready. And so what I've learned about writing novels is you just have to write it again and again and again and keep it private and keep it, you know, safe and work on it until it's as good as you can make it and then other people can see it. I think it's a mistake to send things out too soon to too many people.
Η Σιωπηλή ασθενής ήταν το πρώτο σου βιβλίο ή έγραψες κι άλλο ή άλλα βιβλία τα οποία δεν τα εξέδωσες ποτέ?
No, it was my first. I mean, I tried writing stuff, of course, but it was the first time when I sat down and, you know, Stephen King says that writing a novel is like trying to cross the Atlantic in a bucket. And I love that expression because it's, you know, what he means by that is that it takes a very long time and you lose sight of land and you just have to have hope that you're going to get there, which is why I think I put it off for 20 years because it felt too daunting and too big, whereas you can write a script in 6 weeks, whereas a good novel takes, you know, years to really finish. So, yeah.
Θυμάμαι πριν μερικά χρόνια οδηγούσα στην Αθήνα, στη λεωφορείο Αλεξάνδρας και είδα μπροστά μου ένα λεωφορείο ή ένα τρόλεϊ που ήταν ντυμένο με τη Σιωπηλή ασθενή. Και έγραφε Alex Michaelides, Σιωπηλή ασθενής κτλ. Και το έβγαλα φωτογραφία και το έστειλα στην Έδη για να σου το στείλει. Θέλω να δούμε την πορεία σου μέχρι να φτάσουμε εκεί. Είσαι λοιπόν, πάμε πίσω στα παιδικά σου χρόνια, είσαι στη Λευκοσία, στο Στρόβολο και είσαι στο English School.
Yeah.
Είσαι μαθητής του English. Καλός μαθητής.
I was good at the subjects I liked. Let's put it like that.
Λογοτεχνία, γλώσσα και αυτά.
Yeah, history, art, English literature. I hated physics. You know, things like that was very difficult for me.
Popular μαθητής ή
Oh my
έτσι?
goodness, are we going here? I think it was all right, yeah. I struggled a little at the junior school when I was there first, but when I was at the English school, I made a lot of friends who are still my friends today, so that was wonderful, yeah.
Ένιωθες διαφορετικό παιδί, δηλαδή που ήσουν ένα παιδί που του άρεσε η λογοτεχνία, να γράφει βιβλία κτλ. Ξέρω εγώ, και να μην παίζει ποδόσφαιρο ή να είναι, ξέρω εγώ, εξωστρεφής.
It's a really, you know, no one's asked me that before. I think I felt more different because I was half English. And because even though I speak Greek, I never felt that I quite grasped it in the way that I wanted to. And so I always felt slightly on the outside, I think. No one made me feel that way. That was just the way that I felt. And then I think that therefore is the perfect training for a writer because it makes you slightly on the outside to observe things. And so I think there probably isn't a writer alive who wouldn't have a similar tale to tell, I think.
Άρα αυτό το ήσουν λίγο torn που ανήκεις, αν ανήκεις, ξέρω εγώ, στην Κύπρο, στην Αγγλία, στα ελληνικά, στα αγγλικά, είναι λίγο θέμα αυτό, σε μπέρδευε?
I'm laughing because it feels like it's turning into a therapy session.
Ναι, έτσι είναι το ΤΕΤ-Α-ΤΕΤ, είναι therapy session.
Look, yes, but the thing is, it's both ways because I thought if I get to England, I'll feel like I fit in, but then the moment I moved to England, it was very quickly clear to me that I didn't fit in there either because I was too Cypriot to be English. And so I always felt like slightly in between the two countries. And I still feel that way a little. Yeah.
Οι γονείς σου ήταν υποστηρικτικοί στο να ασχοληθείς με το σενάριο και με τη λογοτεχνία?
They've always supported me. They've always encouraged me. I know that they were worried for years because one of my sisters is a psychiatrist, the other is a lawyer, and then there was me, you know, and so they were a little anxious about it. But they have always supported me and given me 100% support. So I could not possibly have done it without them. And not just emotional support, but financial support and every kind of thing. And it's the reason that I succeeded, I think.
Πότε κατάλαβες ότι οι γονείς σου και τα αδέρφια σου έτσι νιώθουν περήφανοι για σένα?
I see it now with my parents. I'm really glad that this success has happened and they've seen it, particularly my father. It makes me very happy. I think it's nice. I mean, you know, the Man of the Year award, I think, meant a lot to him. It's really nice, yeah.
Ο πατέρας σου τι έκανε, ποια ήταν η δουλειά του?
He was an auditor, a chartered accountant.
Accountant. Accountant.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Και η μαμά?
She used to be an English teacher, but she retired when she had 3 children. She stopped working and she looked after us.
Όταν ξεκίνησες την καριέρα σου, σου είπανε στο εξωτερικό ότι το Μιχαηλίδης μπορεί να είναι έτσι λίγο περίεργο ή ελληνικό, ξέρω εγώ, να το αλλάξεις, Alex Michael, ξέρω εγώ, κάτι τέτοιο.
You know, it's unpronounceable, I think, is part of the problem, if you're not Greek. I thought about it. But now, even though it's a difficult surname, and I do wish that I had a slightly easier Greek surname that people in America could pronounce, I'm really glad I didn't now, because I think it would raise more questions about why I would be denying where I'm from, whereas I'm proud of where I'm from. So I think it's better just to be who you are, really.
Έχω καταλάβει από συνεντεύξεις σου παλιές ότι έχεις μια δυναμία στη γιαγιά σου.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah.
Την Κύπρια γιαγιά του, μπαμπάς.
Well, both of them. But I spent much more time with Persephone, my Cypriot grandmother. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Και γιατί τις είχες αδυναμία, ήσασταν πιο κοντά?
I used to spend Saturdays with her to try and improve my Greek. But the problem was that it didn't really help because, as you know, in Cyprus, in the playgrounds and at school, everybody speaks Cypriot. But my grandmother, every time I spoke Cypriot, she would correct me and say, no, don't talk like that, talk like this. And so it just ended up being more confusing. I loved her because she would tell me stories. I loved her because she was very strong, really strong personality. I loved the food that she would cook. And it was really a special time with her, yeah. I want to write about her now, my next book, I think.
Σε συνέντευξη σου πιο παλιά, είπες ότι όταν ήσουν έφηβος, ήσουν πολύ μπερδεμένος ως έφηβος. Καταθλιπτικός, αγχώδης, νευρωτικός.
I still am.
Στη συνέχεια έκανες αρκετή ψυχανάλυση, αλλά με αυτή τη ψυχανάλυση τώρα μπορείς να καταλάβεις γιατί ήσουν έτσι. Δηλαδή, μπορεί να έπαιζε ρόλο το ότι η Κύπρος είναι ένα μικρό και κλειστό μέρος. Μπορεί απλά έτσι να ήσουν ως mentality. Τι έχεις καταλάβει?
I think it's all these things. I think it's partly genetic. I think it's partly environment. It's partly what was going on inside my house at home. It's also, increasingly as I grow older and I talk to people our age in Cyprus who grew up after the Turkish invasion, that there was a kind of trauma that was, even though I was born 3 years after 1974, we all grew up afraid to a certain extent. And we all had a feeling of anxiety. I remember very, very clearly being 6, 7 years old and worrying what would happen to our dogs, if there was another invasion, and what we would do and how we would get them out alive. And that kind of anxiety for a 7-year-old is probably not healthy or normal. And so I think it was all of these kind of things that made me really anxious. And then feeling I didn't fit in. Yes, but I'm still quite an anxious person, I think, really.
Παρόλο που κάνεις αυτό που πάντα ήθελες, αυτό είναι πολύ σημαντικό σε έναν άνθρωπο. Νομίζω ο Τσάρλι Τσάπλιν είχε πει ότι αν κάνεις τη δουλειά που πάντα ήθελες, είναι σαν να μην έχεις δουλέψει ποτέ στη ζωή σου. Σε βοήθησε το ότι κάνεις αυτό που πάντα ήθελες?
Now, yes. Because I'm doing well at it. For years when I was struggling to get scripts written and nobody liked them, that was difficult and demoralizing, and I felt that I was... now I think it did me good, because I think it probably, bashed my ego down to a more manageable size and made me into a nicer person. But now being paid to do what I love and getting to spend every day doing what I love is wonderful, and it makes me really, really happy, yeah.
Άλεξ μου, θα πάμε σε ένα σύντομο διαφημιστικό διάλειμμα και σε λίγο και πάλι μαζί ΤΕΤ-Α-ΤΕΤ στον Α με τον Άλεξ Μιχαηλίδη.
A friend of mine, Uma Thurman, who I'm sure we'll talk about, who I wrote the book for, she once said to me years ago, Alex, you have the first act problem. The first book that I wrote entirely in Cyprus was Domenos, and that was a really wonderful experience. If I get to England, I'll feel like I fit in, but then the moment I moved to England, it was very quickly clear to me that I didn't fit in there either, because I was too Cypriot to be English. And so I always felt like slightly in between the two countries. even though it's a difficult surname, and I do wish that I had a slightly easier Greek surname that people in America could pronounce. I'm really glad I didn't now, because I think it would raise more questions about why I would be denying where I'm from, whereas I'm proud of where I'm from. So I think it's better just to be who you are. I moved to Hollywood and I thought I was over the rainbow and I would be happy. And I wasn't. I'm still anxious and neurotic as I ever had been. And I think that's what propelled me to get some therapy and start looking into myself. And that's what really started changing my life.
Επιστρέψαμε στο απόψινό μας ΤΕΤ-Α-ΤΕΤ στον Α με τον Κύπριο συγγραφέα, τον πιο διάσημο Κύπριο συγγραφέα στον κόσμο, τον Alex Michaelides. Alex, τελειώνει στο English School το 94, 95, 96, εκεί 96. Και φεύγεις απευθείας για Αγγλία για να σπουδάσεις αγγλική λογοτεχνία, σωστά? Πώς κατάφερες να μπεις σιγά σιγά στο Hollywood, στο να γράφεις σενάρια, πώς βρήκες, ας πούμε, τον τρόπο και ξεκίνησες σιγά σιγά να μπαίνεις στο κύκλο αυτό?
I was in a lot of plays at Cambridge. I was in about 14 plays in 3 years. I loved acting. I loved being around actors.
Έπαιζες εσύ?
Yeah, I was not a very good actor, but I loved it. And I love rehearsals. I think it's because I was always quite lonely. And there's something about a group thing where, if you're in a play, everyone becomes your family. And it's a lovely feeling. Then even my professor in my final year took me aside and said, you have to stop being in plays or you won't graduate. You have to stop. And so, it became like a compulsion. I didn't stop and I kept going. Then I got an acting agent when I was at the Edinburgh Festival. And then I was working as a runner at a production company and I wrote a script and I gave it to the producer, who was an Oscar-winning producer, to read. And then he called me up a month later and he said, I want to give you money to make this. And it wasn't successful because I didn't know what I was doing. But that was the beginning, really. And then he encouraged me to go to Los Angeles and do a master's at the American Film Institute, which is a very special school because they take very few people and then they really train you to work with each other. So they take a few writers, editors, producers, and they just throw you together for 3 years and get you to make films. And so I learned a lot that way, and then I met people, and it kind of went from there, really.
Δεν δίστασες να φτιάξεις τις βαλίτσες σου για να πας στο Λος Άντζελες. Το κάνεις αμέσως, δηλαδή.
Yeah, it's funny because I write about this in the Fury. I loved films, and growing up in Cyprus, my dad, for whatever reason, I think he used to run I probably shouldn't say this in television, he used to run like a private video club a long time ago when he was a young man. And so our basement was full of video cassettes of all black and white movies and things. And I would just watch them obsessively, all of these films, loved these film stars. I wanted to go with them wherever they went when the story ended. And I had this idea, as a boy in Cyprus, if I could just get to Hollywood and make movies, I'll be happy. So it was never even a hesitation about packing my bags and going to Hollywood. And, it was what I wanted to do. It didn't work out the way I hoped, but yeah.
Άρα, κάποιος που μας ακούει τώρα, ένα παιδί που ονειρεύεται, μπορεί να εμπνευστεί από σέναν ότι μπορείς να ονειρεύεσαι οποιοδήποτε όνειρο και από το υπόγειο του σπιτιού σου στο Στρόβολο να βρεθείς στο Λος Άντζελες, στο Hollywood.
Yeah, I would say that's true. I think it's amazing what people can achieve if they believe it enough and they want it enough. Yeah.
Και πώς ήταν ο πρώτος καιρός στο Λος Άντζελες?
It was good. I had a good time. I think I was just still pretty screwed up. And I realized that I moved to Hollywood and I thought I was over the rainbow and I would be happy. And I wasn't. I was still as anxious and neurotic as I ever had been. And I think that's what propelled me to get some therapy and start looking into myself. And that's what really started changing my life, I think.
Και εμένα πάντα το Λος Άντζελες και γενικά η Καλιφόρνια μου έκαναν πολύ carefree. Ξέρεις, places. Αλλά μάλλον είναι πολύ toxic και stressful.
It's not like that at all. It's full of very damaged, wounded people who are seeking validation from external things. It's much more than that. It's full of incredibly talented people. It's also full of incredibly good-looking people, so you feel insecure on all kinds of levels. Having said that, LA, not the industry, but LA itself is one of my favorite places and has a very special place in my heart. Because many of my dear friends live there. It's beautiful weather. Weirdly, when I was having lunch today with Nelly, in fact, We were talking about Los Angeles, and it strangely used to remind me of Cyprus, because there's bougainvillea, there's eucalyptus trees, there's sunshine, and everybody drives everywhere. And so it's actually, as a lifestyle, as a Cypriot, you can fit in quite well.
Και έχω καταλάβει από πριν γίνεις διάσημος συγγραφέας ότι ένας άνθρωπος που σε βοήθησε πολύ και που αμέσως γίνατε πολύ φίλοι ήταν η Ούμα Θέρμαν, την οποία ανέφερες ήδη. Πώς γνωριστήκατε και τι ήταν αυτό που σας έκανε να δέσετε τόσο πολύ και να γίνετε φίλοι?
We did a film together, and the shoot was a well-intentioned film, but it didn't work out the way we wanted. Constant reshoots, it got closed down, it reopened, it went on for so long, and we were filming in London, New York, and Los Angeles.
Τίτλος?
It had two titles, which it's that kind of film. Any film with two titles, you know, is in trouble. The first or second day of filming, when I met her, I was very intimidated, and she was playing the hero. And she took me aside, and she said, let's have a bottle of wine after filming, and I'll take you through the script that you've written, and I'll explain to you why it's not going to work. Which really made me laugh, which is the kind of alarming thing you hear from the lead actress on the first day. And she basically showed me how I was writing scenes like you and me talking. And this isn't cinema, this is a play. And Uma said every scene has to be an attempt at an iconic image, which is something I think about every day now as a writer. And she showed me how to think visually in pictures. And I went back to London where I was writing The Silent Patient, and I rewrote the whole thing using the things that she had taught me. And so I kind of credit my success to her, in a way, you know?
Εξήγησε μου κάτι όμως. Η πρωταγωνίστρια, που είναι και στάρ, σου είπε, έλα να σου εξηγήσω γιατί το σενάριο σου δεν θα πετύχει, δεν θα πετύχει η ταινία. Άρα γιατί είπε ναι να κάνει την ταινία?
Well, what happened, because that's Uma for you, is then I suddenly realized that she was in a process of rewriting the script as we were going, and she made it better. She helped me make it better. That's why it was amazing, because she taught me how to be a better writer. And then during the filming, you know, she would, I mean, there's a story I can tell you, but it's, you know, as an example of just one scene, there was a scene when the hero, she was the hero and the villain was like, you know, holding a gun on her. And I wrote it like this, because I always put everything into two chairs. There's two people sitting opposite each other. You know, and Uma said it would be more interesting if we incorporated rope bondage. And I was like, okay. And then I went to lunch, and I came back from lunch to the set, and Uma was suspended from the ceiling, dangling in ropes. And she said, this is how you write something visual. And then something clicked in my brain, because we did that with every scene, and so she helped me make the film much, much better. And I thought then, because I was a fan, I thought one day I'm going to try and write something for her. And that's where I wrote Domenos, because I wrote it, I wanted to write a character for her to play as a fan, and that's what I've done. So it was written for love, really, which is why I think I had so much fun writing it.
Άρα, το Μένος, όταν γίνει ταινία, θα παίξει η Ούμα Θέρμαν?
I hope so, yeah. There's an amazing producer working with me now in Hollywood. I'm adapting it. I'm having the best time of my life, which really surprised me, writing it. I thought that I wouldn't be sick of these characters. I didn't know if I would be able to write a script again, because it'd been 10 years since my last screenplay. And even though it's very different to writing a book, I'm having the best time. And I think it's going to be a really good film, so I'm actually pretty excited.
Τι σου είπε η Ούμα για τη Σιωπηλή ασθενής, όταν της έστειλες το βιβλίο?
She loved it. But she had a big part in it. You know, she reads everything I've written more than twice, and gives me notes. She suggested that Alicia Berenson in The Silent Patient should be a painter. Originally, she was a writer, and Uma said, no, she should be a painter, because if she doesn't talk, then her paintings can express her feelings for her. It's that kind of thinking that you learn, you know, about. That's what's made me into a much better writer, I think, this kind of thing.
Κάπου είχα διαβάσει ότι είχες μιλήσει με τον Brad Pitt για να γίνει η Σιωπηλή ασθενή στο σινεμά. Ισχύει αυτό?
Yeah, his production company is making it, yeah.
Και η εταιρεία του θα την κάνει η ταινία?
Yeah.
Ναι.
And Jeremy Kleiner, producer, is making it. It's an amazing company. It's taken a long time, but we rode out COVID, which was great. I think it would have been bad if it had come out during COVID, and you know, they've been working on the script, and then hopefully there'll be an announcement soon, I hope. Yeah.
Ξέρεις τι σκέφτομαι τώρα που μας λες την πορεία σου και την ιστορία σου? Ότι πόσο περίεργη είναι η ζωή. Αν ήσουν επιτυχημένος σεναριογράφος, δεν θα γινώσουν επιτυχημένος συγγραφέας. Δεν θα γράφεις τα βιβλία μετά, θα γράφεις τα σενάρια.
Yeah, it's true. And also, if you go further back, this conversation, you know, I've been thinking if I'd probably fit in more at school and been happier at school, and I would have probably been an accountant like my dad. And so life takes you in all kinds of ways that you don't expect it to. But then I think, and I'm sure you'll agree with me about this, that when you look back, everything seems to have been leading somewhere. Do you think so?
Ναι, of course. Και είναι και κάθε φορά μπορεί να πάρεις μια λάθος στροφή και να σε βγάλει αλλού.
Yeah.
Οπότε είναι και θέμα, το timing είναι τα πάντα.
Yeah.
Timing is everything.
Yeah. A friend of mine always used to say, the most important things in life are timing and lighting.
Correct. Σωστό. Ειδικά στην τηλεόραση και στο κινηματογράφο και στο θέατρο φυσικά.
And in real life too.
Ο φωτισμός.
Yeah.
Πώς ένιωσες όταν πήρες για πρώτη φορά στα χέρια σου τη Σιωπηλή ασθενή?
As a book, you mean? Wonderful. It felt incredible. It didn't
Πού ήσουν,
really feel
θυμάσαι?
real. I think I was in London, and I think they sent me a box. I think they maybe sent me a couple of books, and I just couldn't believe it. I can remember they said to me, my publisher said to me, you know, enjoy this feeling because it doesn't last. And it's true. The first book of yours that you see and you touch and flick through the pages, and you can't believe you see your own words printed on the page. It's a magical feeling. And then, unfortunately, like everything else, you get used to it, and it stops being so, you know.
Πες μου, όταν άρχισες να βλέπεις κόσμο παντού, ενώ και στην Κύπρο και στην Ελλάδα και στην Αγγλία και όπου κι αν ήσουν στο αεροπλάνο, σε εστιατόριο, σε πάρκο, να κρατάνε βιβλίο σου, χωρίς να ξέρουν ότι εσύ είσαι δίπλα τους.
Okay, it's funny you said that because I had a really funny experience happen recently. I've just been on a month-long American tour, which was exhausting but fun. And I was in Denver, I think, walking through the airport, and I bumped into a woman, physically bumped into her by mistake, and she turned around and she was holding the silent patient. And I just didn't, it took me a second to register it, and I just said, I wrote that book. She just went, what? And looked at the photograph and screamed. And it was just such a funny, weird moment. It feels nice. Actually, what feels really nice is that people like it. It feels nice that people say kind things to me, strangers. It's a lovely feeling to feel accepted and, you know, liked for something you've done.
Πώς είναι να έχεις κάνει τη μεγάλη επιτυχία με το πρώτο σου βιβλίο και μετά να πρέπει να γράψεις το δεύτερο? Υπάρχει αυτή η πίεση που μπλοκάρει τον συγγραφέα?
Yeah, they always say that the second book is the hardest book. It was difficult. I was very fortunate that Sam, my agent, he gave me some advice. He said, look, you're going to have to write a second book at some point. It might as well be now. And I'm glad that he did that because it means that I got straight back to work. And I think that if I hadn't, I could have put it off for another 5 years, but I didn't. I got on with it and I made it into a job. And it is difficult. There was pressure, but it was self-imposed pressure. And also because I was so far away, and also because it was during COVID, that the success in America didn't really feel real. It didn't feel real to me until January this year when I did my nationwide tour and started to see the big crowds and things. Then it started to feel real for the first time.
Όταν είσαι συγγραφέας στην Αμερική, είσαι σαν rockstar, Πας σε όλη τη χώρα, παρακολουθούσα στο Instagram σου, πας σε όλη τη χώρα, έρχεται πάρα πολλοί κόσμος στην παρουσίαση βιβλίου, υπογράφεις και είδα ότι έκανες απίστευτο πρόμο, όπως είπα και πριν, πήγες στην εκπομπή του Τζο Στεφανόπουλος.
Yeah.
Πώς ήταν εκεί δύο Έλληνες του εξωτερικού να τα λένε? Τι σου είπε εκτός?
Yeah, he was very, very nice. Yeah, I think he was a very, very nice man. And it was nice to speak to a fellow Greek. Yeah.
Πήγες στο Good Morning America, που είναι μια θρυλική εκπομπή. Όπως είπαμε, ο Jimmy Fallon προτείνει μάλλον αυτόν τον καιρό το βιβλίο σου. Πώς ήταν όλο αυτό το promo tour? Εντάξει, ήταν κουραστικό, το έχω καταλάβει. Αλλά σε βοηθάει να καταλαβαίνεις και εσύ τι θέλει ο κόσμος?
I don't really think that that's a sensible way to think about it for me. Thinking about what people want.
Σου λένε πράγματα δηλαδή την ώρα που έρχονται να υπογράψεις?
Yes. Yeah. Some things people say are incredibly personal, and sometimes it's really been moving. There's people who've really, really, you know, they bring me a book that's falling apart, of a copy of The Silent Patient, that they've got so many notes in and stickers in, and they've bookmarks, and it's meant a lot to a lot of people, which is surreal, but lovely. And it gave me a sense of perhaps of the people I'm writing for. And there were some really meaningful encounters with some young people, particularly, who they kept saying it was the first book they read, and it was the book that got them into reading, and you know, things like that, or it helped them. You know, a lot of people took it to their therapist. It was wonderful. But for me, that was the best thing I can do is not buy into all of that, but just to go home alone, sit at my kitchen table, and then just try and write another book just for myself, I think.
Τώρα που είπες therapist, Άλεξ, είχες μια περίοδο που σπούδαζες ψυχοθεραπεία, σωστά. Αυτό, δηλαδή, σπούδαζες ψυχοθεραπεία, είχες να κάνεις με ανθρώπους που ήταν ψυχικά ασθενείς. Αυτό σε βοήθησε μετά όταν έγραφες τα βιβλία σου?
Yeah, it made me into a writer. I think I always had good ideas for plots, but they were shallow and I was immature. And then through, 10 years of therapy, studying therapy, working in a psychiatric unit for teenagers, I started to have the beginnings of an understanding of human nature, human psychology, and why we do things. And so then rather than, I used to write a plot and then try and shove characters into it. Now I think about the characters and then the plot comes from that, which is again what The Fury is about, really.
Γιατί αστυνομικά και τα τρία σου βιβλία, δηλαδή θέλεις να είσαι σε αυτό το είδος ή μπορεί αύριο να γράψεις ένα άλλο είδος μυθιστόρημα?
A journalist in America asked me if I would ever write a romance novel, and I said only if everybody ends up dead. I like crime. What made me into a reader was reading Agatha Christie on the beach in Cyprus when I was 12 or 13 years old, and it was a wonderful, magical reading experience that I've been chasing ever since, I think. And that was when I decided I wanted to write a detective story, is how I think about them. And there's something about the structure of, crime, investigation, solution. It's like three pillars, and you can put a whole story on that. You can build an empire on those pillars. But if you take away those pillars from me, I wouldn't know how to tell a story. So I always start by thinking about, okay, what's the crime? What's the murder? Who are the characters? All that, that's what excites me, really.
Mm-hmm. Θα γράψεις βιβλίο που θα διαδραματίζεται στην Κύπρο?
Well, I mean, I can't definitely say yes, but I'm intending for my next book to be set in Cyprus. Because, just from a writerly standpoint, it feels too good not to write about. All the things we've been talking about today, growing up after the Turkish invasion, my grandmother, my Cypriot father, my English mother, conflicts about food, all these kinds of things about Cyprus, the goddess of love. It's so rich that I feel that I've been given so much stuff. It would be a shame if I didn't utilize it and write about it. So I just have to put in a murder to make it work.
Ποια συμβουλή θα έδινες σε νέα παιδιά που μας βλέπουν και που θέλουν να γίνουν συγγραφείς?
I would say, what I said earlier, rewrite. I would say perseverance is a really good word. I think it's important I think all writers are slightly neurotic. And so I think if you give in to the doubts, if you give in to the self-fear and the self-criticism, there were periods in my life when I would think The Silent Patient was so bad that I would put it in a drawer and I wouldn't look at it for weeks. But thankfully something made me take it out of the drawer. And now I look back and I think I get frightened thinking, gosh, my whole life could have been different if I'd left it in the drawer. So you must keep going, you must, even though it takes years and you think you'll not succeed, you must keep going and then you will get there.
Το να γράφεις βιβλία με τέτοια παγκόσμια επιτυχία σημαίνει ότι κάποια πράγματα στερείσαι. Έχεις ένα κόστος. Ποιο ήταν αυτό το κόστος? Δεν μπορούσες, είπες πριν ότι έγινες λίγο ερημίτης. Δεν μπορούσες να δεις τους φίλους σου, να κάνεις μια απλή βόλτα? Τι σου κόστισε αυτή η επιτυχία?
When I left Cambridge, I had a lot of friends and I would go out a lot. And then I think it was a very conscious decision of mine when I first started to write screenplays that this is what I was born to do. I wanted to be a writer and I took it seriously. And then I became addicted to it, and it took over my whole life. And then I lost a lot of friends. And now I can count on the fingers of one hand my close friends, who I love dearly. I gave up a lot of like socializing and partying and traveling, but it was important to me to work. And that's what gives me full satisfaction and joy, really.
Είχες παράπονα, σου κάναν παράπονα φίλοι η οικογένειά σου?
I think people, friends when I was younger, I think they just stopped asking me out because I always said no after a while. No, I credit my work ethic to my father. He's, in his 80s and he's still working every day. He's never stopped working my whole childhood. And so even though he never said to me, you must work, I just observed him. I observed how hard he worked the whole of my life. And it clearly has penetrated because I believe that the same about myself now. You have to keep working. In terms of regrets, I think now I'm realizing, having had 3 books that have been successful, I would now like to reevaluate my life. I haven't stopped working since The Silent Patient, since 2017 I sold it, and then I started The Maidens the next day. So I haven't stopped since then. I want to take a few months off. I want to just try and relax and have fun and travel and enjoy myself for a bit. I think it's important.
Άρα δεν έχεις το επόμενο βιβλίο στο μυαλό σου ακόμα?
I have plotted it all. I have it in Nicosia on pieces of paper, 88 pages of the plot written down. So it's safe there. And when I come back to it in the autumn, perhaps I will sit down and I will write.
Ποιο είναι το αγαπημένο σου πράγμα να κάνεις στην Κύπρο, όταν είσαι στην Κύπρο? Τι σου αρέσει?
See friends, cook. I love to cook. And it's my treat. When I write every day, I don't eat. I don't have breakfast or lunch, and I just kind of, stay heightenedly focused. And then I cook myself an amazing meal with some lovely fish or the great vegetables you have there. And having come from London to Cyprus, it's so different. The produce that you can get in Cyprus is so much nicer. And so I really enjoy cooking and sunshine and beaches.
Και στο Λονδίνο, ποιο είναι το αγαπημένο σου πράγμα να κάνεις?
Culture, I suppose. I love theatre and cinema, watching films. I love walking, and I love, all of that kind of aspect of London. It feels like you get the best of both worlds going back and forth between the two. It works really well for me.
Αυτόν τον καιρό τι διαβάζεις? Διαβάζεις κάποιο βιβλίο, κάποιο άλλο συγγραφέα?
What am I reading? I'm actually between stuff. I've just read the new David Baldacci book, Calamity of Souls, which I think is brilliant. I get sent an awful lot of stuff. I have 3 books that I have to read to give blurbs for comments on, quotes. And then I'm going to go on holiday and just read for pleasure. But honestly, I've been traveling since the 10th of January, so I haven't really, it's been tiring, yeah.
Να πούμε, Άλεξ μου, ότι βρεθήκαμε στην Αθήνα τελικά. Είμαστε στη Μεγάλη Βρετανία που μας φιλοξενεί, γιατί είναι και οι μέρες που κάνεις τις παρουσιάσεις σου στην Ελλάδα. Η Ελλάδα σου φέρθηκε πολύ πολύ καλά, δηλαδή σε αγάπησε αμέσως και οι αναγνώστες και ο τύπος. Πώς νιώθεις στην Ελλάδα?
Yeah, it's nice you asking me that, because I wanted to mention how happy I am. I've been in Athens for a couple of days now, and I've just got the biggest smile on my face. I knew it was going to be one of my last stops on my tour, so I've been looking forward to being here since January. And honestly, being here feels like coming home. The bus you saw with the poster of The Silent Patient, that was, of course, my publisher, the Opera, who've become like family to me now. So it's great, and it really makes me really feel very proud that the Greek people seem to be happy for my success. It means a lot to me, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Και ρωτάνε πολλοί πότε θα παρουσιάσεις στην Κύπρο το Μένος?
Well, this year, it's working out my schedule, and it's something you and I are going to talk about as well when the cameras go off. I want to do it this year. Θα είναι η πρώτη σου παρουσίαση στην Κύπρο, νομίζω. Δεν έχεις καταφέρει να παρουσιάσεις τα προηγούμενα. Yeah. Well, the COVID hit the second one, and the first one I was in London. But, no, it's very important to me to acknowledge Cyprus and to meet readers there. That's what I'm excited about. So we have to plan something fun together to do.
Ναι, οπωσδήποτε. Λοιπόν, το Μένος του Άλεξ Μιχαηλίδη είναι στα βιβλιοπωλεία εδώ και λίγο καιρό από τις εκδόσεις Διόπτρα. Μπορώ να πω ότι είναι ίσως το αγαπημένο μου από τα τρία μέχρι στιγμής. Μπορώ να πω. Ίσως επειδή, ξέρεις τι, δεν είναι αντικειμενικό. Ίσως επειδή είναι σε ελληνικό νησί. Και αυτό που λες το φως είναι διαφορετικό. Οι Κόρες ήταν σε university campus. Ένιωθες αυτό το...
The first one was in a psychiatric unit, but that's, I think part of the reason is, honestly, I had the most fun writing this of any of them, and maybe that just comes across on the page. I hope so.
Ωραία. Λοιπόν, οπότε έρχεται και καλοκαιράκι. Το βιβλίο σας για το καλοκαίρι, αν δεν το έχετε προμηθευτεί, το Μένος από τον Alex Michaelides, τον πιο επιτυχημένο Κύπριο συγγραφέα που έχουμε βγάλει ποτέ. Και Άλεξ μου, είμαστε πολύ περήφανοι για σένα. Ο κόσμος το λέει, μου το λέει, δεν ξέρω, νομίζω σου το λέει και σένα όταν είσαι στην Κύπρο και σου εύχομαι κάθε επιτυχία.
It's really kind. It's been so wonderful to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ, να είσαι καλά. Ευχαριστίες και σε εσάς που ήσασταν και απόψε μαζί μας στο ξενοδοχείο Μεγάλη Βρετανία που μας φιλοξένησε, στο Ξένος Travel για την πολύτιμη βοήθειά τους στην πραγματοποίηση της απόψινής εκπομπής και ανανεώνουμε το ραντεβού μας για την επόμενη εβδομάδα, την ίδια μέρα και ώρα. Να είστε καλά, καλό σας βράδυ.